Alright, people, alright. Let me just check. What am I pressing? Alright. We are in the house, people. We are in the house. Just bring up my Facebook familia. Lahda. Alright, let me just check. Everything is cool. Where is the Facebook people? Here you are. Let it load. So, inna alhamdulillah wa kafah. والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فالسلام الله على القوم أهلا وسهلا بكم ومرحبا One Ying Layth, bienvenidos a todos, people. Bakhair ragle, khush amadid. And as always, swagatam. Alright, what is going down? Somebody said, ciao. Alright, ciao. Bella ciao. What is going on? Before we begin, Mufti, you're popular in the Quran only community. Kya yaar, I'm popular in many places. Don't restrict me to a community. First of all, let me just check. Whoa, that is piping hot. Let me just check the sound, audio check, people, because I'm always fidgeting with the settings. So today I've kind of decided to use the fidget and try the other mic. Give me a bit of freedom. Yeah, I don't like the, I don't like it, this one. Don't like the, la yu'ajibuni, this restrictions in front of me. So, you missed Turkish salutations. Ah, right, of course. What is the Turkish salutation? I'll have to check that one out. Bet you got a ponytail on the back. I haven't. Once upon a time I did. So, first of all, let me just check. Audio check. I take everybody can hear me fine. Now, so, people, let me just run through the rituals, right, for those of you fortunate souls who've come across me for the first time. Boy, this is the beginning of the end for you, unfortunately. So make sure you do like. There you go. There you go. Those are my social media outlets. More so, what is it? The YouTube, Facebook, and Insta. Twitter, I'm not so. And check out the mind traps that are on YouTube. Check them out, people. And whilst people are sharing, liking, what I'm going to do is always, Allah, put up a little poem for you. Off. Toba. Na lagao dil. La tuhib. So, what is going on, people? What is going on? I came across an interesting clip of a dua. I thought, you know what? I have to share this with you guys. Here it is, people. Thomas is making a dua. That was one of his first times in the masjid, so you could see how he signs off the dua. He says, thanks God, it's Thomas. So, just so God knows, obviously, just in case God's like, which one was that again? And he says, oh, it's Thomas. So, cha. So, Mufti Sahib, Monday night ki bajaye Sunday morning session kya kare? Request. I do have the mind traps. Salam from Bangladesh. Much love, much love. Right. Do you admire, respect Sheikh Asrar? Respect? Respeto, respeto. I'm sure I do respect him, don't I? Alright, so what is going on? What is going on, people? What are some of the questions? What's some of the fitan and fasad going on? Somebody said I always sign off with yours sincerely as well. Of course, of course. Unless you sign it off as yours faithfully. And head it with to whom it may concern. Whichever, I take it that's in a... Chalo, I better stop. People won't be able to handle the humor within Ramadan. They'll be like, Toba, 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 Astaghfirullah. What is this Mufti on about? Asrar Rashid, embarrassed UK. I don't know what that means. Right, somebody's asked about my opinions on Uzair in the Quran. Right, I have spoken about that previously. Let me just check. I have spoken about that in fact, I've got a clip on YouTube. Do check it out. It's just type in Mufti Abu Layth, type in the keywords Uzair, it'll come right up. That is it Ezra, as many theologians, many kind of Muslims, scholars have assumed, or was it Osiris? Who was called Usair in Arabic. Obviously Egyptianized Arabic, but in the Quran, Uzair. So, and I've inclined and leaned that way, that this Uzair in the Quran was Osiris. He was not Uzair Ezra from, because the simple belief that people had was that because the Jewish Bible was lost to the Jews during their exile in Babylon, so after centuries they rewrote it, and one of the key scribes, his name was Ezra. Now some people say, some Jewish sources kind of describe him as a nasty piece of work, and others highly praise him, but he's of mixed kind of reviews. He's not just absolutely loved. So he's somebody, some people think he wasn't a good person, some people think he was a great person, but he definitely contributed to the restoration of the Jewish Bible. Now the question was that, is this restoration why Allah has said that they said Uzair ibn Allah, that Uzair is the son of God? But it didn't quite, you see, I'm not fully convinced, because it mentions that about قالت اليهود, that the Yahud say Uzair is the son of God, and the Christians say that the Messiah, that Isa is the son of God. Now because there's a liking of the two within the same verse, it does not really sit right that the Jews considered Ezra by any kind of standing the way Christians consider Jesus. So even those Jews who highly praised Ezra, who consider him a masterpiece, but they considered him like an amazing, let's say, rabbi or somebody who, has done a great khidmah, a service to Judaism, but not divine in any way. So that's a bit of a stretch to me. So I feel this fits more right with Osiris, because Osiris was the kind of the god of the underworld, and he was a divine avatar. He was an avatar of the divine, and he himself was the most compassionate, and he was somebody who really fought the cause for humanity against the sun deity, and he was like a favorite of many the Egyptian folk. So ये कौन कॉल कर रहा है? Right, so this one not nice, no me gusta. Right, so the yeah, so because the early Jewish tribe, the Israelites that were exiled, or not that were exiled, but that left the Exodus, that left Egypt with Moses, they would have carried this baggage with them. So even if they turned away from, let's say, polytheism or whatever it was, even if they were never into polytheism the way the Egyptians were, it would have been very difficult to have grown up in Jewish culture, sorry, in Egyptian culture, and not have been influenced by these myths. I think it's very difficult, especially when the Egyptian culture was so domineering and dominating, and so they would have always held Osiris as a hero. And even though they, kind of said, well, he's not a god, but maybe they still carried that thing. And I gave the example of Ram in the Hindu, in India, how Ram is venerated, Sri Ramji. Now, the thing is, even so, you can imagine those people who convert to Islam that are Hindus, but they would always still have a special place in their heart for Sri Ram. Now that's because it's been part and parcel of their culture. So that's in a similar way, I felt that I was in line with those Mufassirin that it's more fitting. Right, what is going on? What is going on? Peoples, what is going on? I've started uploading my recitation. Alright, Mumtaz. I've done Surah Fatiha. Right, so what is going on? Azarati has mentioned your views on virtues of Laylatul Qadr. Laylatul Qadr. Now, Laylatul Qadr, you see, what does Laylatul Qadr mean? Does it mean it's a specific night in the sense that, the way people understand it, Inna anzalnahu fi Laylatul Qadr, wa ma adrak, that this, you see, this whole Suratul Qadr speaking of that we reveal this verse on a night of immense power, or it could be argued on the night of the decree. Do you understand? So there's two ways to look at this. One is the general not folkloric, but the general narrative. I suppose it is folkloric as well, but the general narrative that Muslims, that is widespread, and that is that Laylatul Qadr is a recurring night that happens every year, annually. Then the scholars massively disagree amongst themselves. When is Laylatul Qadr? Many said it's in Ramadan, some said it was out of Ramadan, some said it may have been the night of Hajj, some said it may have been 10th of, Dhul Hijjah, some may have said it was a different night, some said it moves around every year, it's an non-determined night. Some people said it was in many of them, I think that's a better word, many said it was within Ramadan. Then they disagreed when in Ramadan. Some said it was in the first Ashara, some said it was in the last Ashara, some said it's on the odd nights, it's on the 21st, on the 23rd, on the 25th, 27th. Many people took the 27th, and this became kind of almost somewhat iconic of Laylatul Qadr. People say Imam Abu Hanifa said it, other people said it. Other ulama held the view that it kind of rotates between the last nights, or the odd nights of Ramadan, the last 10, 21st all the way to 29. Some ulama felt that there is no such thing really as Laylatul Qadr in that sense. Depends what we mean by Laylatul Qadr, of course. What the general people understand by it is it's a night of immense virtue. And some people say that it is like, if you worship on this night, it is as though كَأَلْفِ شَهَرٍ, it is like 1,000 months of worship that you have done. I mean, I would say fine. I would probably go with, if you want to understand it as a night of virtue, then there are certain hadith saying that seek it out in the last odd nights of Ramadan. Personally, I feel on my personal kind of basis, my personal understanding, that this hadith that seek it out, iltamisuha, in the odd nights, in the last odd nights of Ramadan, was more a kind of encouragement to make people really optimize their Ramadan. That's what I would probably feel, and I wouldn't, in my personal understanding, I don't feel that Laylatul Qadr in the Quran is necessarily the Laylatul Qadr that people have understood today, Laylatul Qadr, to mean one of the nights of, this night that we're meant to worship in and do things. And I don't think it necessarily was that, because Laylatul Qadr was a Makki surah. There was no, Ramadan existed, but there was no fasting or worshipping on Laylatul Qadr that was ever documented or ever transmitted. The Prophet never taught people, oh, by the way, it's Laylatul Qadr, we should be doing this. Later on in Medina, this talk kind of manifests. So that's, but I feel fine. It's a good thing. It keeps people engaged. It keeps people, seeking out. They try hard. You see, another interesting thing is nothing is told on what to do, because nothing is set for this Laylatul Qadr. In fact, the simple the ahadith, the simple teachings found in the ahadith are just to make dua. And that is of the simplest of ibadat. But if it helps people, if it's something that makes their Ramadan much more meaningful, then fine. There are many, look, what we have to understand is that there are many things today which are part and parcel of the established narrative of Islam, which have been in that exact way in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Just to understand that. So a good example is like i'tikaf is another good example. Imam Malik, when asked about it, was like, he said that the Salaf here never ever really did that. he was like, nobody seemed to have practiced it in Medina. But you see, it works for people. So sometimes there's a difference between, what is necessarily accurate and what works for people. These are not always, they don't always go hand, I suppose they go hand in hand, but they're not identical or they don't mirror each other always. Okay. So I hope that helps. All right. Did you have a haircut in the lockdown? All right, people. The Lord, did you think that I was bound by the same restriction? The Lord provides, people. The Lord provides. See, that's the difference between us. You see, I have tawakkul. And whosoever, وَمَنْ يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. See, if you have tawakkul upon your Lord, He will suffice. Allah, Allah. Inaya Daneen, ahlan wa sahlan, ahlan wa sahlan. During Laylatul Qadr, could gates of conscious mind open in order for desires, wishes to be impressed easily upon the subconscious mind to be fulfilled? Perhaps. These things about the unconscious mind, about consciousness, we don't really understand them. There must be some, there must be some kind of things going on in this world that we don't fully understand. So, yeah. Somebody said, what was the reason of the absence of the Malikis in the Indian subcontinent. That's by Yasser. That's because, people, they were awaiting my arrival. Allah, 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 Allah. Or in the words of the poet, Inni wa in kuntul akhira zamanuhu la'atim bima lam ta'til awailu. Allah, Allah, Allah. He says, even if I have come a little late, don't worry, no to despair. Even if I've come a little late, I'll do that which even the predecessors were not capable of. It's an epic poem in Arabic. Inni wa in kuntul akhira zamanuhu la'atim bima lam ta'til awailu. So, do madhabs follow the fiqh of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu an? Right, yeah, they do. The madhab of Medina of Imam Malik is based heavily on, I won't say it's exclusive to, it's not exclusively based on, but it's heavily based on what are called Qadaya Umar. So the judicial judgments of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu an is what the madhab of Malik is heavily based on. As a Rati, you're doing it. Right, so what's this? Mufti, do you need a full fist, huh, to lead the prayer? Toba, toba, toba. ये क्या पाप की बातें हो रही? Let me read that question again. Do you need a full fist beard? Acha, 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 acha. Toba, 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 toba. I was about to say that are the shayateen not locked up? From Shu'aib Ashfaq. I was going to say, no, you don't need a full fist. Is that what the Qari Sahib's telling you? No, don't listen to the Qari Sahib. Oh, toba, 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 toba. Don't listen to the Qari Sahib. You don't need a full fist. Yeah. How many fingers? Four fingers, yeah, 4 fingers. 2 fingers are enough, 2 fingers. Look. So, what is going on? Right. Al-Fitnat al-Kubra. Alright. Charles Mohammed. Charles. I'm quick off the... Trying to... Sadly Farid called you Dajjal of Birmingham. Let people call me the Dajjal, yeah. You see, as I say, Joe Blogs, your view on occasionalism. Alright, you're doing it, Joe Blogs, you're doing it, man. Let me just come to you in a moment. Right now, as I say to such people who say these things, you know, muftis are Dajjal, muftis are this, muftis are that. Let them, you know, if this brings peace, if this brings them some peace of mind, let it be. You know, at the end of the day, you see, to these people, my message is, whichever way you spin it, the center of the discourse is still me. You're still preoccupying yourself with me, you're still talking about me, you're thinking about me, you're obsessed over me. And who are you again? These people. Alright, so Joe Blogs, what is going on? Your view on occasionalism. So occasionalism is the belief that it's a philosophical kind of belief held by many people, including Muslims and non-Muslims as well, including Christians and other people as well. It was debated amongst the Greeks historically, that does God have a primary causation? Is God the primary cause for everything? Or does he set systems in place and allow them to kind of take place. As, for example, pretty much Aristotle or other people would have kind of deemed as well. This is with the the Greeks, that God doesn't need to. That's the opposing view. That's what I would fall in line with. That Allah doesn't need to be doing everything, every single thing. He would just set systems in place that would do it. He wouldn't need, so Allah would have laws of forces of nature, like gravity would set the law of gravity. Now he doesn't need to himself directly be pushing everything to the ground and resisting it with, and at the same time simultaneously and doing this, and he doesn't need to be doing that. And he's given humans free will. He doesn't need to be making them, like, I pick this glass up now, or sorry, this cup up now, God is making me pick this cup up, this kind of stuff. In my understanding, it's flawed, because it kind of really does away with free will. That's in my understanding. Would the Quran as external proof of Islam be a language that most people have to undergo years of training before they can somehow understand its miraculous nature? Right, that's from DKK. So first of all, Joe Blogs, I hope that answers your question on occasionalism. I have got a very detailed video discussing occasionalism with Muhammad Hanif. It's one of my Mind Trap shows, so do check it out. It's on YouTube. It's about at least an hour and a half where we're discussing, or at least an hour of that whole thing, we're discussing occasionalism back and forth. So all the arguments you can imagine, he puts them to me and we go back and forth. Right, so DKK, the question about the Quran being in Arabic, why is it in Arabic? Well, the Quran would have to be in a language, and then the same question would apply. If it was in Latin, then why Latin? If it was in Greek, then why Greek? If it was in Persian, why Persian? If it was in Arabic, why Arabic? So you can never kind of bypass altogether that question of why this language, because it would have to be in a language or another. So yeah, and does everybody have to learn Arabic? I don't think. Right. Okay. There's a personal thing, and then there's a religious thing. A personal thing is, I believe every Muslim should try to learn Arabic. That's my personal belief. But I would believe that it's like a duty upon them to learn it. But when I say duty, I do mean in a kind of compulsory sense, but not want to do with like punishments and things like this. I don't believe that they are. I don't believe that they are kind of, that you're sinful for not learning it. But I believe it's important. If it's important to you, then you should. All right, Hakeem on Facebook, Mufti, love your blend, man. All right, you're doing it, Hakeem. You're doing it. All right. So Yamina has asked, "Idda necessary if pregnancy can tested negative?" Idda necessary if pregnancy is tested negative. Acha. So see, this is but this is assuming that the idda is only for pregnancy, and I've got detailed explanations explaining the wisdom, some of the wisdoms behind idda. Now, you're right. It is part of it is pregnancy, and it's universal, so everybody everywhere can observe the idda. The other part, I've said in the past, there's also a social element to it, which people are they're kind of they're overseeing. They're kind of neglecting, or maybe just blindsiding it at the moment, because it is an incredibly important part. I would say in some ways as powerfully important as the pregnancy, because quite often when relationships break up, and by relationships I mean like marriages, there is a lot of resentment, and there is a lot of hostility and this kind of antipathy towards one another, and there's a lot of allegations being hurled around. So people, and unfortunately, a lot of the time people are trying to shame the woman. Okay, now this is utterly unacceptable, but it is unfortunately what happens in human societies. I'm not saying it's, and it's acceptable by any standard, but it is not uncommon. It's very common that people will be like, oh well, she was just having an affair anyway. I bet she was sleeping around, and a lot of the time they slut shame women. Now, if the woman imminently engaged in another nikah, you see, this may cause a kind of tear on the social fabric in terms of jahili, ignorant consequences that are once again not justified, but they, if we're going to be real, they would probably happen in many societies, even in the West. I mean, even here, don't think that, in these societies where people are literate and educated, that they don't have basic human emotions. They do. The amount of times I've dealt with and deal with relationships, the amount of times I've heard people and the stuff they'll say, and, they could be professionals. You'd think, a professional wouldn't never behave in that way. I'm telling you, they go erratic. People are like, I suppose rejection is difficult for people to handle. They don't handle rejection well. And the irony is, even if they don't want it, so two people living together, it could be a toxic relationship. And then one of them says, well, okay, I'm going to file for divorce. And the other one feels rejected all of a sudden. This is the problem with suddenly being shown a mirror. But it's true, at a subconscious level, people are, they can't deal with the fact that the other person doesn't want them, even though it's a known fact that, look, I don't want you, you don't want me, this is toxic. Yet the moment that is said, the ego gets hurt. And so this can cause all kinds of backlashes and things like this. So it's better that there is a grace period, it's only at most 2.5 months before the woman embarks on another nikah. And by the way, I am of the opinion, as many ulama, that the only prohibition for women during an iddah is just one of nikah. They can go out, they can meet people, they can work, they can shop, they can chill out. It's just nikah, that's all. Cool, people, I hope that helps. Mufti, read a nat. Do you really want me to break the screens of... Do you really want to be tortured that much? Alright. Somebody wants a long, detailed lecture on istighatha. Abe yaar, why does that whiz true? Why does that need to be long-winded? Simple. إِذَا اسْتَعَنْتَ فَاسْتَعِنْ بِاللَّهِ. Now, if you're going to ask for the unseen help, like divine help, then just ask Allah. I've never understood why people find that so difficult as a concept. Like, why is it okay for me here to pray to, let's say, Data Ganjbakhsh or to Abdul Qadir al-Jilani to kind of miraculously heal me of the coronavirus, but it's awkward for me to pray to God? See, this is the jahiliyyah that people are stuck in, this is the problem. People are, by and large, you see, this is unfortunate. This is the kind of the Frankenstein effect. Almost, it's Nietzschean almost in some ways, that religion came to destroy the shackles of superstition, and the Frankenstein in its wake is yet nothing but superstition. It's it kind of, in this fight against superstition, eventually the ritualized, institutionalized religion became a form of superstition for people. And this is why I'm always against the institutionalization of religions. All right, somebody said Fariduddin Ganguteli. Ganguteli's done a tweet against me. Ganguteli. Yeah, Ganguteli Madad. What is going on, people? What is going on? Right, so, oh, right, there was a clip. I want to show you this clip, people. Check this out. Where is it? Where is it, people? Peoples. So,
for the first time, the call to prayer will be played over loudspeakers in the Cedar Riverside neighborhood 5 times a day for the next 30 days.
Many of us have never heard the Muslim call to prayer before.
Holy month of Ramadan begins tonight, and this year you'll hear one tradition in parts of Minneapolis.
I did not expect the Adhan to take place in the United States of...
Right, now this is followed by is that a tweet or a Facebook post by Tariq Fatah, while the rest of us fight COVID-19, mosques in Toronto, so that was in America, and in Toronto also, get permission to use loudspeakers to play Allahu Akbar for the Islamic call to prayer. Why does the fable of the Arab and his camel ring a bell in my ear? So, and I think further on in his message, he goes on to state that he will be, I believe, taking it to court. So he will be kind of taking this matter to court in saying, why does that get to happen? So I wanted to kind of discuss that. All right, let me just bring back the... Right, so I came across that clip. I believe, unless it's a fake clip, but from everything I've read, it seemed legitimate. Now, I don't really take so much of a liking to people like Tariq Fatah. Reason being, I feel that he is... You see, a person can believe anything. I have no issue with him believing whatever, or not liking Islam, or not liking... I have no issue with that. There's many atheists I'm friends with. I speak with them. We discuss. We even debate. I don't hold that against anyone. But I feel he's very kind of always very hurt. Just always very bitter against religion. And I find that disappointing to always see that, an educated person always so, just like butthurt really, just about religion, like always saying that. So, yeah. But that said, I'd like to speak about this phenomenon. And I brought his example because he is somebody who I don't generally agree with in many things. Maybe in some I may, but I want to say this thing about calling the adhan. I personally do not agree with this, okay, with calling the adhan out on loudspeakers. This, in my view, is a bid'ah. It is an innovation in Islam. It was never what the Prophet ﷺ would have taught. Neither was his purpose to blast so loudly over a people the adhan. If that was the purpose, then the Prophet could have done, what he could have had was every person in each key, let's say, residential block, blasting at the top of his voice the adhan as well. Not just one person from his masjid. He could have had them in each of the dur, the way the houses settlements were. He could have had a person in each kind of key dar settlement blasting the adhan, even with just human voice. But yet the Prophet ﷺ never taught that. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ actually taught that tathrib, to call somebody to pray after the adhan is done, is a bid'ah. And that's what Ibn Umar and other people tathweeb, that's what they highlight as well in the books of Sunan, that it's actually a bid'ah to call somebody to pray. But I'm not getting into that petty thing. But this blasting it on loudspeakers, now I understand it's become the norm in Muslim countries. So, you know, it doesn't bother me, although I think it is religiously wrong. It is not, I don't think it's a good thing. But I think the adhan, if they said it in the masjid just with their normal voice, then it was a good thing. To blast it on speakers, I feel is a haraj and an inconvenience for people. And you're not meant to inconvenience people with religion. But so, okay, fine, but in Muslim countries it exists. There's no problem, you know, it's part and parcel of the culture. Now, introducing this in non-Muslim countries, I think this is one of the worst damned ideas. Whichever nutcase of a genius tried to come up with this and get this through is going to be responsible for the rise in Islamophobia, in hate crimes, in persecution of Muslims. Stop annoying people by feeling so insecure about your religion. Look, Islam is ma waqara fil qalb, okay? It's something that's in your heart. You don't need to shout it at the top of your throats to feel good about being a Muslim. You know, we're not a minority in this world. We are a substantial amount of people. Islam is not going to disappear. It is here to stay. Right, you don't need to feel good about Islam by trying to say, well, look, the majority of the people that would listen to that adhan won't be Muslim. Now, this is going to trigger the far right, who are then going to come back 10 times harsher against Muslims. I guarantee you what's going to happen in these areas, they're going to start attacking women with niqab. They're going to start doing things like maybe petrol bombing masjids. They're going to start persecuting in any way, discriminating against Muslims. Prejudices will be on the rise. Why? Just because you need to push things in people's faces. So I would say, look, don't do this kind of stuff. What do you get out of blasting the adhan? Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. You know, we know we are Muslims. We know Allahu Akbar. But this, remember, for non-Muslims, this is associated with terrorism. This is associated with bomb blasts. This is not to them. Now, they may not say, maybe the majority of the people may not say something. Okay? They may not say something. But it will take a substantial minority to just lash out. So that is why I really don't like these kind of things when I see them. And I want you to, look, listen, be honest with me. If in these areas, let's say in London, in Birmingham, let's say in Toronto, wherever that was, or I don't know which other American, I think it said, I don't know where it was, which state, Minneapolis or somewhere, but wherever it was in America, that they're blasting the adhan. Imagine they started to blast Hindu bhajans. Imagine in Birmingham, we have to listen to Hindu bhajans being kind of like sung out loud. I have to listen to this. I wouldn't like it. Like, because I would think, look, why are you imposing your religion on me? I don't have to listen to, you know, like, Jai Shri Ram or Om Jai Jagdish or whatever. I don't have to listen to this stuff. Why should I have to listen to it? You know, like, by all means, you want to be a Hindu, be a Hindu. Why are you imposing it on me? So this is the problem with doing these kind of things. And some Muslims get so excited. Oh, wow, we've got the adhan in America now. Calm down, people. Because the backlash that's coming on the back of that, you know, hashtag Chittar are coming on the back of that. You know, you're going to seriously see some days of wailing and crying. So I'm saying that whenever I see these things, it really annoys me. Because I think, like, what is wrong with people? Just put yourself on, you know, I don't want to hear Christian hymns being sung really loud from a church. I've got a church right in front of me, right where I live. Now, I wouldn't want them to be blasting, Christian hymns every morning and every evening and every afternoon. You're taking the mick. Think this is some kind of a house party going on. I mean, I wouldn't even... So we have to look, the neighbor has a haqq in Islam. They have a right to be honored. The Prophet said in a hadith that, look, none of you believe if your neighbor goes to sleep hungry whilst you are full. In one hadith, the Prophet said that I was advised by Jibreel alayhi salam about so many rights regarding the neighbor, to the extent that I feared that he would inherit, that, he would be like he would get to inherit from the other neighbor. Almost, as in, I feared that. So, yes, I'm just saying. Now, somebody said, look, they like Christian church bells. Well, that's fine. Look, I'm not saying, maybe some people love the adhan being played. That's fine. That's why you have earphones, or you sit in your house and you play on YouTube. Play Christian bells. I haven't got a problem with Christian church bells. If you want to listen to them, listen to them. You want to listen to hymns, you want to listen to Hindu bhajans, you want to listen to Judaic kind of recitations or Sikh recitations, listen to them. Sit in your own comfort of your house and play it on your TV. Sit there all day. But don't impose it on other people. So people, that is my message. I hope that lands this. So I actually, on this occasion, I felt, even though I disagree with people like Tariq Fatah, but I felt that, he's got a valid point here. I'm not saying this, and you see, it's already begun. He's already started being denigrating about Islam. Oh, why do I have to hear the Arab and camel fable? You see, but this is just the beginning. So I hope that makes some sense, people. Alright, what else is going on? Mufti, did Yazid ibn Muawiyah fabricate hadith for his agenda? I would think the Umayyads, later Umayyads, definitely did. Just as the Abbasids did, just as anybody did, just as the Shia did, just as, many Sunnis did. But did Yazid per se fabricate hadith? Personally, I don't think he did. Reason being that, you see, in Yazid's time, it was still very early. And I don't think, you see, now this is going to sound ironic. I think they just didn't care. There wasn't this kind of, they had manpower authority to do what they wanted to do. They didn't need a religious kind of superiority, if that makes any sense. They, whatever they wanted to do, they would just do it. They weren't really, and it was still very early in Islam. So I think the problem with fabricating hadith is that several Sahaba were still alive and things like this. I don't think that Yazid or other people at that time would intentionally just fabricate hadith. And I don't think that was Yazid's kind of goal. That, I want to appear as a very holy person. I don't think he was ever trying to do that. Right, so somebody's saying, Mufti, did Epstein kill himself? Hell no. Epstein's murder was a huge cover-up. I'm telling you. It's a shame, really, because we would have seen some horrendous confessions going on. It would have changed. You think coronavirus is changing the world? That would have changed the world. Somebody said about poetry. Right, there was actually a poem. I came across this poem. Somebody said to me, can you read a poem? And I'd come across this of Muhsin Naqvi Sahib. One of my favourite poets. I always find his poems kind of slick. But there was one I was reading. So I thought, well, this is from the book, by the way, Azab-e-Did, that the kind of punishment or the suffering of, I suppose it says of vision, but it's of seeing someone, of seeing. The punishment of seeing. Right, so he says, check this out, people. ذکر شب فراق سے وحشت اسے بھی تھی मेरी तरह किसी से मोहब्बत उसे भी थी. That by mentioning the evening of separation, he or she too would have fear that the way I loved somebody, she too loved somebody. मुझको भी शौक था नए चेहरों की दीद का, रास्ता बदल के चलने की आदत उसे भी थी. Wow, 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 wow. That, you see, I too had an infatuation with wanting to see novelty, new things, yeah, new things. And he says, likewise, she too had an interest in always changing her paths. उस रात देर तक वो रहा महवे गुफ्तगू, मसरूफ में भी कम था, फरागत उसे भी थी. Wow, 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 wow. He says that for a while that night we remained in deep conversation. That I too was not so occupied that day, and she too had some time on her hands. मुझसे बिछड़ के शहर में गुल मिल गया वो शख्स, हालांकि शहर भर से अदावत उसे भी थी. That after separating from me, that she seems to have easily settled in the city. Even though she was averse or she had antipathy towards city life. वो मुझसे भर के ज़ब्त का आदी था जी गया, वरना हर एक सांस क़यामत उसे भी थी. Allah, Allah, Allah. See, you know what? Having to translate is a problem. It ruins the flow. But he's saying that maybe she, it could be he as well, but she had even greater control of themselves, hence they lived. Or else every breath they took was no less than Qiyamah, doomsday in itself. सुनता था वो भी सबसे पुरानी कहानियां, शायद रफाकतों की जरूरत उसे भी थी. That they still continue to listen to old narratives and stories. Perhaps they too are in need of companionship. तन्हा हुआ सफर में तो मुझ पर खुला ये भेद, साये से प्यार धूप से नफरत उसे भी थी. That after being alone on a journey did I come to realize that they too had love for the shadow and hate for the heat. मोहसिन में उससे कह ना सका यूं भी हाल दिल, दरपेश एक ताज़ा मुसीबत उसे भी थी. He says, Muhsin, I couldn't get round to saying what I felt in my heart. And they too seem to have a preoccupying calamity at the time anyway. Wow, 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 wow. You know, this, you gotta say, there's some epic... Here, here's another very short one. I'll read it, but I'll just read this straight through. Those who understand it, I guess. आओ कशकोल को नीलाम करें, कर्ज़े अरबाब करम क्या रखना. Wah, कर्ज़े अरबाब करम, those people who give. So why be indebted to those? He's saying that this beggar's bowl, let's get rid of it basically. फिक्र आराइश मक्तिल में रहो, महरो मेज़ान व अलम क्या रखना. उसकी यादों को गनीमत जानूं, इस ताल्लुक को तुम कम क्या रखना. हंस भी लेना कभी खुद पर मुहसिन. Sometimes laugh at yourself as well, Muhsin. हंस भी लेना कभी खुद पर मुहसिन, हर घड़ी आंख को नम क्या रखना. Wow, wow, wow. Somebody had asked about Urdu poetry, so why not, people? Let's get back to some of the questions that are coming. What's going on? Even I am struggling to understand. Somebody said that's very difficult, Urdu. Come on, yaar. Kya yaar? What is difficult? What is difficult? Somebody who is the poet? That's Muhsin Naqvi, who, by the way, it's very unfortunate that he was actually killed, martyred, I'd say, killed in a sectarian, the kind of civil sectarian warfare that happens in Pakistan. He was a Shia, as you could guess by the name Naqvi. That's a Shia name. But I find that so disappointing that I know he did used to provoke the kind of Wahhabis and sometimes the Deobandis, and he would provoke them, but still to kill someone, over being provoked. It's a sad state of affairs, honestly. It's sad. I remember watching that on YouTube and because he's one of my favorite kind of poets, it was sad that, this is the kind of world we live in. And I get the fact that he was provocative, because he's got this poem where he's really going at it, and he's very intelligent as well. But still, this kind of murder, sanctioning murder, executions on the name of religion, where has this come from? Where has this come from? Right, so, on that thought, people, speaking of death, and two great legendary actors had passed away. One especially, one of the best Bollywood actors there was, Irfan Khan. I was deeply saddened to really hear that he had died. He's probably, maybe amongst the best talent there is in that whole industry. So yeah, it's a shame, May Allah. And Rishi Kapoor died as well, but I suppose he's of some age. but they both died to I think both had some kind of cancer. I believe that's what it was. But yeah, and I was asked that, is it permissible to say things like is it permissible to say things like rest in peace and stuff like that? Of course it is. Of course it is. And I've got a detailed video where I explain that in the Quran. I speak about Stephen Hawking's at the time, and is it permissible to say things like, may Allah bless them in the afterlife and things like this, or may Allah forgive them? And the answer is, of course it is. Of course it is. And we have verses in the Quran, but you can watch that detailed video where I explain that in much detail. I do explain that even the dua of Ibrahim alayhi salam, that Rabbana ghfirli wali walidayya. Now this was said in Makkah at a much later stage in life. His father had long passed away, and his father, Ibrahim alayhi salam's father, was not a Muslim. Right, so right, so I'll come to the question here. Ismail Akram has sent a question. I'll come to that in just a moment. Right, so this but this dua is said that, oh Allah, forgive me and my parents the day, in the afterlife. Now this is a dua for his parents who were not believers, and that is one of the interpretations of that ayah. Then one of the ways to understand that ayah, that it is permissible, and Fakhruddin al-Razi speaks about it, and other people as well. Right, so I was asked a question about how do I differentiate between tradition and the Sunnah. I'm not sure what tradition. By tradition, I take it you mean Hadith. So as Imam Malik, this isn't just me, the Maliki madhab makes a distinction. So does the Hanafi madhab actually. They make a distinction between Hadith and Sunnah. So not every Hadith is a Sunnah, not every Sunnah was necessarily a Hadith that was documented. So that's the difference. So Imam Malik, the Maliki madhab, makes that distinction. So the Sunnah is that which the Prophet lived by and taught as his way. A hadith may just be some interpretation. It may be something that as a one-off. In fact, that's what Imam Malik said to Abu Yusuf. When Abu Yusuf came to Medina and saw that the adhan was different. And this is another shock, by the way. People will be shocked to know how many different adhans there were. There's a huge variation. The adhan of Ahlul Medina was not like the adhan of Ahlul Makkah, which was not like the adhan of Ahlul Basra, which was not like the adhan of Ahlul Kufa. They all had it's similar, Allahu Akbar, but they differed in how many times they said Allahu Akbar. They differed in the style in which they say it. In fact, Ahlul Basra had a really strange one. But the point is that different people had a slightly different adhan. Now, when Abu Yusuf came to Medina and noticed that the Madaniyin, people of Medina, only say Allahu Akbar twice. So they say Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu an la. And then when they've said Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, Ashhadu anna Muhammad, then the Mu'adhin quietly says Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu Muhammad Rasulullah, and then goes back to Hayya ala salah, Hayya ala falah. Now the point is that Abu Yusuf said, strange, ajib, Ahlul Medina la ya'arifun al-adhan. He said that, oh, the people of Medina don't know the adhan. So Imam Malik said that amma adhanu yawmin wa layla fala adri. He said that, look, maybe the Prophet one day or one night somewhere traveling did the adhan like how you guys do it. Maybe. Ho bhi sakta hai yaar. Es posible. You know, compadre, es posible. But the problem, but he said this, what you're hearing here, the children have taken from the fathers who took from the companions who heard from the Prophet himself in the city of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this has always been a death blow, you know, an absolute crushing, a skull-crushing argument against any of the other madhabs whenever they come up against the school of Medina, the Maliki madhab, is that when Imam Malik was asked by the people of Kufa, the Hanafi madhab and other madhabs about things, he said to them, I mean, I know sometimes I'm sarcastic, but his words were, he said that the Quran was not revealed at the bedside or at the rivers at the side of the Euphrates. He said it was here in Medina that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam lived and taught. It is here that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is buried. He said it is here that the angel Jibreel manifested himself. He said, do not come to us and teach us about religion. And this has always been one of the most powerful arguments of the school of Medina, the Maliki madhab, that it is, you know, I would feel undefeated from this approach, that Imam Malik was the voice piece of the practice of the people of Medina. All right, let's take a look at some questions. Somebody said, what a clown. Is he wearing an earring? Regardless of how eloquent he is. You teasing me, you naughty. How eloquent. Acha, he's causing cognitive dissonance. On one hand, he's trying to diss me, then he's trying to praise me at the same time. Yeah, ho ka raha hai. This one causing the confusion, you know, the hashtag halchal ho rahi hai, halchal. Right, so what else is going on, people? There was a question here by Jove Trader, you're doing it, man, you're doing it. Why Arabs do not acknowledge the contribution of Iranian people to Islam. They often take credit for Iranian scientists of Islamic Golden Age. Where these hatred come from? It's a good point in some way. That look, it is true that the you see, I'm a bit, I'm going through a book right now, the history of the Arabs. I'm going through the audio book right now, actually. And it's interesting that even in there, they do acknowledge that several of these of the Arabs, or sorry, of the Persian scholars of that time. This book is by Albert Hourani. I'll show you the cover of it. If you guys can see that, that's what I'm going through right now. So that's only on chapter 5, A History of the Arab Peoples by Albert Hourani. But it's a very fascinating book. But you see, even in there, they do acknowledge that, you see, when spoken, like not when spoken to, when you read a lot of the writings of the Persianized scholars, if I can call them, sorry, not Persianized, if I can call them Arabized Persians, because they were people that wrote Arabic. They spoke Arabic as well as Persian, Farsi. They wrote Farsi as well. But many of them kind of considered themselves kind of Arab in the past. So they will speak of themselves almost as we, when they speak of Arabs and things like this. In fact, there was just a chapter where they were addressing this, that even such and such, if, you know, a writer who, despite being of Persian origin, when he speaks of different civilizations, like the Indian civilization and others, but when it comes to the Middle Eastern, he will say Arabs and he will use we, as opposed to saying, like, making a distinction. So it's, if we're trying to get into the minds of the you know, the Near Eastern civilizations that were Muslim, that they had a kind of, like, they themselves felt that they were kind of part of the Arab civilization. Because if we're going to be fair, Arab civilization from the time of the Umayyads, the ancient, the tribal, you know, the Mawali era, which is the Umayyad era, that really, because in the Mawali era, what they were doing was they were treating all, like they were saying there was an Arabization, that if you weren't an Arab, then you were useless. Like, we wouldn't stand a chance in front of Bani Umayyah. Like, they were just like, you know, we were third-class citizens, and what all citizens had to do was they had to either they were Arabs, or they would have to take on a name, as in a clan name of some Arab tribe. It's up to them who they chose. So I might just go with my neighbors who are from, let's say, I don't know, wherever they're from. They could be from Bani al-Ghatfan, or they could be Tamimi, or they could be Lakhmi, or they could be whatever. And I would just call myself as well Al-Lakhmi, or, you know, Al-Himyari, or you know, I would just go with them. So this Mawali era was very different. Later on in the Abbasid era, the true people at the forefront are no longer the tribal Arabs. It is these new converts to Islam who are, like, kind of Arabized. They are the new Arabs. The Abbasids are really just run by the, you know, first of all the Persians, and then the Turks, and then the Bani Buwayhid, who were still Persian, you know, Shia. And you see all these people. Otherwise, if you're going to look at them, most of the people, you know, Fakhruddin or Razi or anybody, these people were like not from Arab origin in that sense. Nobody would have been. I want to say nobody, the majority. So, and this hatred, I think the hatred is more recent, although it has cropped up, it has kind of like crept up time to time. And it goes right back to pre-Islamic times with the Sassanid Empire versus the Arabs. And every time something happens, that comes back up. So now, because Iran is Shia, you know, it gives them that kind of excuse. Right. Somebody's going on here about Billy. All right, Bill, love, right back at you, man. Billy's in the house, people. Doing it. Some guy on here, you know, the ironies, these people who, they watch me. I suppose I'm kind of grateful because they still contribute to my views. You know, even in their hatred of me, they still aid and assist me. Wah, wah, that is pure sacrifice. Qata na kijiye ta'alluq humse. As Ghalib says, that, you know, don't absolutely dissociate yourself from me. Kuch nahi to adawat hi se. Wah, 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 wah. If nothing, at least be hostile. So you get these people, they're so obsessed that they can't stand me, yet they watch me for hours on end. They watch all my videos. They contribute to my, they help the Facebook algorithm. They get my videos more out there. They share it amongst people. I love it. I mean, they work for me for free. All right. Mufti, what was your experience like when completing Hajj? I haven't done Hajj, I've done Umrah. It was good, alhamdulillah. I mean, nothing to, I won't say something, we all love you, man. Alright, Taha, you're doing it. Haris is in the house, you're doing it, Haris, you're doing it. Ratvi Sahib. I've got another person to speak about in my Mufti Masala segment. Right, so that is going to be Molvi Naveed. You see, Naveed is like good news. But he's anything but good news. Naveed Ashrafi Sahib. Right, so somebody said you're a Mufti who ain't done Hajj. I'm sorry, God. I forgot that with the odd time. Can I bring his name back? Junior. Hi, mommy's little boy, Junior. You're awake late. Parents let you stay up late, have they, Junior? See, that's the thing. Really, you know what? Why I allow these people to be like this? Because really, they are just expressing their depression in words. What kind of a Mufti doesn't do Hajj? God damn it. Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry, I didn't realize God had sent me a message on my YouTube live. God said, Mufti, you ain't done Hajj yet. I'm like, oh, sorry, God. हमसे भूल हो गई भूल से भूल हो गलती से mistake हो गई गलती से. Right, so but this is, you know, this is the thing about judging people. You know, on that, I want to share a thought. I was having a discussion with some of the lads, actually, and I was saying that, you see, this is something, I think this is reasonably, I don't know, maybe exclusive, if not definitely disproportionately found in Muslims, the Muslim community. And I don't think this is found as, I don't think it's found really in other societies as much, other communities. You see, Muslims, I feel, we were having this discussion and I was just kind of analyzing it, that we are probably amongst the few only communities that have such a fear of being judged about what we believe. Not about what we do. So many societies may have fear of like let's say you could be embarrassed, or, you know, oh, I can't play this sport. If I play, I'm going to make a fool of myself, or I don't want to go out dressed like that. People will laugh at me, or I don't want to, you know, ruin my haircut because people will laugh at me. I think that's that's an evenly distributed kind of sense of social shame or embarrassment. But about what we believe, just belief, not what we do, just belief. you see, in the West, to think out of the box is seen as a kind. It's seen as a kind of like a visionary status. That wow, this person thinks out of the box, lateral thinking, critical thought. Wow, you know, this person is a leader. Oh, he's got leadership skills. He's a genius. These are accolades in the Western society. Yet, even in the West, Muslims, a lot of us are so fearful of what people will think about what we believe, and if it's anyhow any different to what they believe. That is such a shame, man. That is so disappointing, honestly. I find that so disappointing. You know, that's it. What triggered this conversation with my mates was that I was speaking about, you know, with my Mind Trap, I've reached out to several people, and I've got several people lined up for the Mind Trap shows and episodes, and I'm kind of like just throwing out loads of invites and kind of juggling them along. Now, I had a few people, but I had like, and I'm sure many people think this, but I had this message where this person said, look, that I would love to do this, and the person's generally very decent, very safe, very, you know, very kind of friendly with me. I would say, I would assume takes a liking to me and things like this, even the views, everything like this. In fact, I would think maybe thinks similar, very similar, I would think, in many of my kind of thoughts. But he said, look, by coming on your show, like my family, as in my distant kind of family, that like I can't do this because they would kind of judge me. And I'm thinking, what? I'm sorry, what are you 4 years old this year, or is it 5 now, or 4.5 still? Is it like, I mean, this is such an unfortunate state of affairs, really, that many Muslims still have, which other people, I feel other communities don't really have that. Not with belief. Like, people think, yeah, well, I believe whatever. You know, like, what has it got to do with you? But with Muslims, we're so fearful. And that's just wrong, yeah. All right, so, right, what is going on? Thoughts on how Christians claim to speak to Pir Shami is a charlatan crook. Who's saying that was true? You see, Pir Shami, Saqib Shami Saab, I do kind of like him, I'm going to be honest. In a certain, I don't obviously agree with him in many of his, and neither would he agree with me, but I do kind of like him in a way for, I mean, I do like him, not in a way, but I like him for, he's done a lot of good as well. So even though I disagree with all that kind of Pir Muridi, that kind of stuff, but I think for some people it works. So, you know, for them, I think he has helped a lot of people. So in that sense, I'm not going to really say anything about, not at all. I'm not Morgan Freeman. Judgment is not a good trait. Right, so Haris, no, what's this? Can you tie your hair as a man in Islam? Can you tie your hair as in... Of course you can. In fact, the Hadith in Bukhari mentions that the Prophet ﷺ had 4 plaits at a particular time when he was traveling, especially. But many of the companions would braid their hair. They would actually have braids. Yeah. Right, what is going on? What is your thoughts on Muawiyah radiallahu an? Alcoholic beverages served at our Mufti. My wife and I are converts. Is it permissible to have alcoholic beverages served at our walima for our non-Muslim family and friends if they purchase it? Yeah, if they purchase it, that's absolutely fine. There should be no difference on that, really. Right, what are my thoughts on Muawiyah? I'm very respectful of Muawiyah radiallahu an. I do have a lot of respect for him. I think whatever happened has happened. But I've got a detailed video on criticizing the companions, and I explain in much detail. So if you want to watch that, I do explain that it doesn't really, it doesn't, if we're going to criticize the companions, which I think I give two options. I say, look, you either take, where I give the red pill, blue pill kind of scenario, if you guys remember it. And I mentioned that one of them is very critical, the other is just venerated, we're just praising them. But I feel that if you're going to take the critical route, then you have to truly be critical of everyone. Somebody mentioned Shawshank Redemption, one of the best movies of all time. Epic. In fact, I'm pretty sure late last year I watched it again. It was amazing. I watched it after so many years and I was like, wow, still just as amazing. Now somebody saying it was born before it was. It was made before they were born. Of course, I'm sure many great events happened before you were born, and some of which led to you being born. The Great Big Bang. No, the cosmic Big Bang, yeah. You dirty minded people, Right, so what is going on? What is going on, people? What is going on? How can you idealize them when you know what they did after the death of the Prophet? Who is this? Who are we talking about? Oh, we're talking about the companions. You see, look, let me tell you something. यार चलो यार खुल के बात करते हैं यार دعنا نتحدث بكل انبساط. Right, let's just chill out and you see the situation is like this. Right, that there are some things which are good for people, okay, at a certain way, a certain understanding. There isn't, I don't know, like there isn't much you get by, like, people have a need for certain things, okay, like certain narratives, certain understandings. The companions of the Prophet, right, radiallahu anhum, do I believe that they were perfect human beings? I don't believe that they were superhumans, if that's what you're asking me. But I feel that there is a need for people who are Muslims, who believe in Islam, to have, there is a need that they have to venerate these figures. And, whether people agree with that or not, but they can understand the need. Like, you can understand that, right, there is going to be this need. Like, these will become the kind of the figures within Islamic history. Now, whether some of them ever did something which was questionable, or somebody did something that was bad even, let's say, does that have to be constantly brought up? And, like, I don't see what they will gain by this. Because the question of, no, but we're just being critical isn't really true. Because if we're going to be honest, the Tashayyu, let's say the Shia way of looking at things, and I'm very, reasonably very respectful. I've got a lot of good Shia friends. I, regularly will speak to some of them, back and forth some messages on WhatsApp, and I've always called for respect and building bridges with all, different sects and different groups. But the Shia faith, in my understanding, it doesn't have like an end game, because it's not really, like, what I mean by that, let me justify that. You see, it's just speaking about the past. It's like crying over spilt milk. Like, we can cry and cry and cry, but then what? Like, what do you want people to do? Like, whatever. Like, if I say, oh, let's say such and such person, great person, but let's just say Like if I said, as an example, like they were much greater people than Imam Malik, but let's just say I say Imam Malik, you say here, and I'll say, oh, you know, the wali at the time broke his arm. I say, God damn. Now I'm just going to sit every time and I'm just going to talk about this forever, incessantly. Like, there's no end game to this. Like, what's going to happen? Like, I can't now save Imam Malik's arm from being broken. And, like, I don't see the purpose, even if let's say I popularize this person as a negative person, this wali of the Abbasids who broke Imam Malik's arm. There's no end game to that. Like, nothing actually happens. So I would say that you see, I don't see any, but I do understand that there is a need that people have to venerate, the companions, and fine, that works, so it does. And if we're going to be honest, now I know this will offend people, but I'm just being honest here. If you can criticize, if you can find, let's say, errors or mistakes with one companion, you can find them with another, because they were all human beings. None of them were, supreme or sublime. And just as, let's say, Abu Bakr, let's say he made a mistake, let's say Umar made a mistake or got something wrong, Ali got things wrong. Like Ali wasn't somebody that came from heaven. He wasn't somebody that... You see, now this is the inconsistency that I find with the Shia kind of perspective, that they are very critical of many companions except Ali. Anything Sayyidina Ali did was always perfect. Why? Why does everything Sayyidina Ali have to be perfect? Why? I mean, I'm just being honest. Even Imam Malik, when he was asked, he said no about Sayyidina Ali, even though about the others he said fine. Imam Malik being controversial. They asked Imam Malik, do you think Sayyidina Ali is like the best of people and so on? And he said, no, Abu Bakr, Umar, whatever. And then they said, do you think Sayyidina Ali? And he said that the person who wanted to rule is not like the one who didn't want to rule. Now, this isn't to kind of criticize Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anh. Obviously, Sayyidina Ali is one of the most amazing people in Islamic history. But my point is that, you see, that swings both ways. Like, if we open the gate to criticizing companions, then we've got to criticize Sayyidina Ali as well. He doesn't get a free pass, whilst others don't get a pass. Either they all get a free pass, either there's consistency in one way or the other. Like, either we're going to go full out, all guns blazing on everyone. Because if we're going to criticize the wives of the Prophet, the best friends of the Prophet, everybody, then we're going to criticize members of his family as well. Are the wives not his family? They're his family as well. So I would say that, you see, this is the problem, because I would consider his wives his family as well, his Ahl. And in fact, Imam Malik said they were his Ahl, and Imam Malik said that in fact all of the Muslims are his Ahl. So you see, this is the inconsistency that I find. Now, I don't really like the whole debate thing. I don't like the sectarianism, but I'm just saying that here, that this is the issue. This is why I would just say that, look, people have a need to praise, like, let's say, to idolize, let's say, people of the past, religious figures. So they are going to idolize the companions of the Prophet and his wives, or whoever is around him, basically. Tika, la ba's bihi. That's, in fact, they need that narrative. Let them have it. Like, I don't think, if we get super academic with them, super critical with them, all it will do is just ruin everything for them, because that's not how it works. On this point, I'm going to say a point, actually. Somebody asked me about this recently. Maybe it ties in. There's a question here about, are statues of Buddha or Jesus allowed in Islam? Okay, I'll come back to that question, Hound. Hound is his name. Right, so, look, somebody asked me a question recently, and I thought, well, I was speaking to, and at the same time, whilst I was asked this question, in those days I was also speaking to another friend about this issue. So I thought, look, I'll answer this live on one of my lives, and it seems relevant. Right, now, the question is that, let me just, Oh, Harris, I wasn't trying to put you in timeout. Apologize, that was by mistake. Right, so I was speaking to somebody about learning basic kind of Islam and stuff. And they were speaking to me and asking me questions about, look, how do I teach my children about these miracles and things like this, and you know, how do I explain to them the right narrative, because they kind of agree with me on many things. Let's say that a lot of these miracles that are given as supernatural miracles were not supernatural, but the story is just presented in that way. Now, I said that, look, I want, and just maybe this might be helpful to some people. Like I said, look, my own children, my own daughters, they study Islam at their kind of school, and at a kind of like they have like an after a weekend madrasa kind of at their school. So they study Islam there. They study these stories. They study like I see them sometimes come home with this, like they'll, like I remember they had the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam and the fire and things like this, or about Moses alayhi salam. They read these stories about the miracles, about, let's say, he was thrown in the fire, Ibrahim alayhi salam, and he remained unharmed and he came out. Now, I don't personally believe that. And I've explained that the Quran never mentions that he was actually thrown in the fire. It just mentions they prepared a fire, that's all. But Allah saved him from it. Now, but I don't, try to correct my children. Like, I don't try to, like I've seen them with that story. I mean, they're young. So my eldest, Layla, she's now 8. And Zara is only 5, but I don't correct their story. Like, I don't say to them, oh, by the way, this this isn't how it happened, that it happened like this, or this is how that's, you see, because that's just silly, that's petty. That, look, people need certain stories at certain stages of their lives, and that's fine, like that. You don't need to feel that you need to kind of be always correcting things. There is a developmental stage that human beings go through, that there is a need for certain things, that this is a child stage. There is a need for stories. There is a need. In fact, this is probably how, and the child stage probably reflects the the non-actualized adult mind. And that is probably the reason why these stories are about in the first place, for people like that. So, and the understanding is that as people mature, they will find their way. I'm sure that, as my children grow up, they mature, or other people, once their minds reach a level of that kind of maturity, they will find their path. You don't need to kind of come to a kid and try to say, Lord, let me explain this to you, rationally, and from physics and from, that doesn't, that's just ruining the thing for them, because that's not the need that they have at the time. So that's what I would say, that the same thing, I know that's I was tying that onto the early discussion about people have a need sometimes, and if that's their stage where they're at, then let them be. Right. Right, okay, so what's going on? People, don't unnecessarily block people, please. Mufti has done a video on sex slaves. I have done a video on sex slaves. I have explained, I mean, look, it's not, it doesn't mean that it has to answer the question for everyone. Maybe it doesn't. But I've tried to, in the best possible way, give an explanation on how sex slavery existed, and I've explained that, you see, you've got to understand, first of all, how slavery existed. Because when you're coming to something, you've got to understand the greater question first. Like, how do these things exist in a society? So it's like, if somebody said, well, I don't know, how does 28-day refund work? But they live in a primitive society, let's say, where there are no where there is no statutory law, there is no standardized version of commerce, and like, so you have to explain to them, well, first of all, this is the backdrop. There are laws, there are things like this, the commerce, rules, regulations. This is what it's protected by. This is how it works. So you've got to give people a kind of a backdrop to understand. So I've got a video. It is in two parts. The video itself contains two parts. There's a part where I explain about slavery, and then there's the latter part where I explain, or I think first I explain about sex slavery, I'm calling it. It wasn't actually sex slave, concubines, but then I speak about slavery as well. So, yeah, in essence, once we've understood how slavery worked, not to justify it, I've never said it was a good thing, and Islam has never said slavery was a good thing. In fact, Islam did encourage at every opportunity to free slaves, but it didn't abolish slavery. Now, not in its first go. Now, I would believe that Islam did set a trajectory that once people reach that trajectory, slavery would become abolished. And hence a lot of the fatwa of many ulama, including the Malikiya, you know, some of the mashayikh of Ibn Ashur, Shaykh al-Riyahi, I mention other people. I mention people, is it Baba Ahmed al-Timbukti from Timbuktu, another from Mali, and great Maliki ulama who had written, you know, way before the United Nations resolution on prohibiting slavery, outlawing slavery, that they had written that slavery is haram in Islam. So I do believe it was haram once people arrived at that stage. But I get the fact that it may not, and slavery, I do explain that you have to understand that in that day and age, I know this is going to be really difficult to grasp really, but that's why I explain in my second talk about social consciousness. Once the social consciousness is adjusted, everything changes. But you see, prior to that social consciousness, it's not there. And then I give the example of ambiguous images and so on. It's better to watch the actual video. Cool. Idris, you're doing it. You're doing it. Serious questions only. All right, Zeba, you're doing it. You're doing it. Right. Harris, first warning. Right, come on. Harris isn't a troll, so we don't need to worry about him trolling. Right, Muhammad Habib, yep, I'm well, shukran for asking. What do you think of the philosophers Ibn Sina, Ibn Rushd? Yeah, I love the philosophers. Ibn Sina wasn't actually from me. People will say, it's interesting, he's a lot more popular today than maybe he was previously, but Ibn Sina, a great thinker of this ummah. Interestingly enough, somebody had mentioned about cannabis. He was one of the few scholars who wrote that cannabis is the benefits of hashish. but by the way, I've got a detailed video on cannabis, on marijuana. Do check it out. I do explain that it is not, I do feel that it is prohibited, forbidden for people under a certain age, and I say ideally 25 is the age when the neural plasticity has kind of come to an end. So prior to that, it could disrupt kind of the synapses and things like this, and the kind of the infrastructure of the brain could be damaged. So I do mention that, and therefore that would constitute tahrim, haram. After that, if it was done, I don't feel it's haram. I don't think it's necessary. I'm not saying it's a good thing in Islam, but I just don't feel the evidence is there to make it haram. Right, so what is going on? Right, was there a question I had to answer? I think Hound had asked a question. I said I was going to answer it. Right. Shadi Jabali has asked, we live in Mexico City, there is no mosque. Can that be a problem for my deen? Alaikum assalam. Shadi, orale, hermano, orale. Right, Mexico, doing it. right? That's not a problem for your faith. No, you can't. But I'm pretty sure Mexico. Oh, you live in Mexico in a city. I thought you said you live in Mexico City. I was going to say I'm pretty sure Mexico City does have a masjid, but um, but no. If you live in a different city, it doesn't have a masjid. That's fine. You know, it's not in any way damning for your iman, so to speak. Cool. All right. Was there another question? Since concubines and sex slaves were permissible, is the Quran not meant for all times? Inaya, it is meant for all times, but watch my video on trajectory hermeneutics. So the Quran is meant for all times, but you see, certain verses, we do believe that certain verses do get, the rulings within them get abrogated. Now, you see, the abrogation, rulings within the Quran, ahkam, are at most, like if you take the Quran, it's what, 6,000, let's say about 600 almost verses, yeah. Now, over 6,000 verses, only 500 of them are to do with rulings. So, over 6,000 verses of the Quran have nothing to do with ahkam. I mean, one could still take rulings from them, but they are not the ahkam verses. So the ahkam can be abrogated at times, and the Quran itself discusses that gradually with alcohol, with other things like slavery now would be abrogated. Certain things would be abrogated with certain times, and amongst them would be this as well, concubines. So because that would just fall under slavery. So it's not that it's not for all times. It is. One can still take heed. See, reading the Quran, you get to understand many things. Even the verses that were abrogated, like that are still read in the Quran and were abrogated in its day and age, were still there to read as a reminder of gradual development, of how people were in certain stages, how the times have changed. So it is still there. But that said, these things are a very small portion of ayat in the Quran. A very small portion. So, yeah, I hope that makes some sense. Statues of Buddha and Jesus allowed in Islam. There is a hadith that angels don't enter the house where these things are. Yeah, I think, the hadith about angels not entering the house, I have mentioned that, you see, that was just simply creating a distancing. That it was like a kind of social distancing with these things because people were new to Islam. Now, statues per se, it doesn't mean if you've got a statue in your house. I haven't really got a statue or anything, but I was thinking if there was an idol of something. Idol! Toba, toba. I meant like a figurine of something, just in case, like a doll. In case one of my kids left a doll. Right, so, you see, dolls are statues as well, yet because the meaning behind them is different, there was clearly no problem with them. Many of the companions' children had dolls. So, yeah, so the point is that this isn't something that is necessarily, I don't believe it's haram in that sense, but I could understand that if somebody was new from a certain faith, like let's say a person just came out of Christianity to Islam, then yes, I would advise that they do, they shouldn't have these things like crucifix and these kind of things, because they've opened a new chapter, and it should be kind of wholeheartedly, as opposed to kind of, because for them this is probably very, like, it holds a strong value still. Or if they've come from Buddhism or Hinduism or something with a lot of statues. But if somebody had, like, let's say somebody bought a little, you get those laughing Buddha kind of little statues with the fat tummy, and I think he's scratching his tummy or something. But let's say you bought a little, you bought it as a souvenir, you're on holiday and you picked one up. Does that mean you're cursed now and this is shirk and this is... No, I don't believe any that is shirk or even haram in that sense. I don't believe it's haram. If you've got it for just as a, I came back from Japan and look what I bought. But if you believe in it as superstition, like this is going to bring me good luck, or this is going to change my future, then that is haram. Okay. Right, no, the eyes thing is, I find that ruling a bit, I find it a bit, if I'm going to be honest, find it a bit dumb. Or if it doesn't have eyes, what's that got to do with anything? You know, if it doesn't have eyes, oh, it can be their picture, but it just can't have eyes. You think, well, why can't it have eyes? You know, such a dumb thing. Oh, because then it's not a complete picture. And you think, well, what if it didn't have hands? And you say, no, but then it's still a complete picture. What if it didn't have a mouth? No, it's still a complete picture. What if it didn't have eyes? Oh, no, then it's not. And you know what that comes back to? That's the Christian kind of impact, which, I mean, whether it holds some truth in some other way or not, but that, you know, the eyes are the windows to your soul. That said, I do believe that people can make an incredible connection through the eyes. I do believe that. And maybe consciousness can be kind of, in some ways, you know, connected, maybe through the eyes and things like that. But I feel, that said, that this is where this belief is coming from. If there's no eyes, then there's no ruh. Think, cha. Is that where it is? So blind people have no, no ruh. What's this? Yusuf Fulat, any good sources on learning about slavery, abolitionist movements in the Muslim world? I don't know, you know, honestly. I honestly don't know. Maybe some Muslims have done some research, maybe some PhDs on it. I don't know. I did read up on it, but a lot of this kind of reading is done in Arabic, and I just search stuff. I research, I find papers, I read things, I cross-reference, I find something, I ask questions all the time. Like, I'll be reading something, I'll be like, what does that mean? And then I start searching about this person, and who is this person? Let me read up. Oh, what kind of views did he have? Oh, what's this view? What is that about? Oh, now I'm learning about that. Oh, wait a minute, who disagreed? Now I'm learning about... That's how I learn. So I don't actually learn from just one book. So this is why it's difficult sometimes when people ask me, can you recommend a book? I genuinely don't know what to recommend to them, because they want a particular topic, but my learning of a topic is so scattered that I can't quite bring it down to just one book. And people think I get this stuff from just like a book. And sometimes it's, I mean, in this topic, obviously I'm reading, but in other topics, it's, you know, sometimes it's my own kind of thoughts. Right, so what is going on, people? What is going on? Right, so Mufti, is the Hadith on the conquest of Constantinople referring to Suleiman, because he was in Dabiq, like the Hadith, and it mentions the Byzantines. Did he fabricate it? Suleiman ibn Abdul Malik. Suleiman ibn Abdul Malik did not conquer Constantinople. Constantinople wasn't conquered till, what was it, 1560 something? It was conquered by Muhammad al-Fatih. And his, yeah, so it's nothing to... Most of those Hadith, I feel, were kind of made up and stuff. Or maybe they were false memories that people kind of projected back onto the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Alright, people, alright, what is going down? If you look at the letters, it's both A and... what's this? If you look at the letters, I don't know what this person's talking about. Both A and M are both Sanskrit. I don't understand that. If you look at the letters, they're both Sanskrit. Chaudhry, well, alright, Imam Kazi's in the house. You're doing it. He's saying that's how he does research as well. That's the best way, really, to just read different things. I read a lot of things from Scribd as well, the app. I'm reading up papers. I was reading an interesting paper the other day, actually, about... it was based on Wandsborough's kind of... But, I mean, it was, I suppose, inspired by somebody was writing about how Islam they felt was different to the books, like, you know, people of the book, the Judeo-Christian narrative. They felt that it was radically different, although it's claimed that it continues, but it wasn't really, because they were arguing that in that paper that Islam's Tawheed seems very different to the kind of monotheism, the Semitic monotheism, what it's called, Semitic monotheism. It doesn't, because he argues in this person, he argues in his paper, I've forgotten his name now, but it was on script, but he's arguing that the Jewish and Christian monotheism seemed very tolerant of other gods, as in saying that you guys can worship other gods, only we the Israelites don't worship other gods. Whereas Islam kind of rules them out altogether. And Judaism, to an extent, Yahweh was from a kind of pantheon of gods. So Yahweh was one god from like the house of El. And so there were many other gods. And Yahweh most likely had a wife or a consort called Ashira, I think her name was. And so what happens is Yahweh becomes the sole god of the Jews, of the Israelites, and he is then this kind of warrior god who's a very jealous god, and he doesn't want them to worship anyone but him. So this thought that, you see, what Islam came with was radically different to the Judaic monotheism. I don't know if that's true, but it was, you know, it's okay to read, I guess. I mean, it would depend if that's true, as in if that is what the Jewish people actually believed back then. I do believe that Musa alayhi salam, Moses, was one of the, you know, one of the most vocal people against, as in a vocal voice for monotheism. And as being forever, as in there is no exclusivity of monotheism, that there are no other gods, that monotheism really is for everyone. This is the understanding I have. I have read a bit more of the other book, by the way, by Ahmad Osman, claiming, you know, he's put the whole chronology absolutely in different order. So according to him, you see, David Dawood alayhi salam, was the pharaoh Tutmosis III, and he is a contemporary of Abraham. It's a complete different Quran. I'm telling you, it's a mind. So you see, and his son Suleiman, which means the man of peace, was Amenhotep the fourth, I believe, who is, I believe, then contemporary with Joseph. He's putting, because so he has a totally different chronology, and according to him, David was not from the line of Abraham, neither from Moses or an Israelite. David was a pharaoh, and he was an Egyptian, and he feels that Ibrahim alayhi salam's, it's really strangely kind of intriguing. I don't know whether I buy all. I think some of it I'm finding some angles quite interesting. Like the Yusuf alayhi salam angle is very interesting about Yuva. He says that he is Yuya, Yuya, I believe, or Yuva, right? But he's the Egyptian kind of the father of the pharaoh. Yuya, I believe his name is, but that's Yusuf alayhi salam, who then it's his grandchild who is Moses, he feels. And you see, he feels that Moses was also a pharaoh. He was Akhenaten, and it's really, it's all over, like you have to complete. It's like the chronology, the normal chronology is just torn to pieces. It's really strange, some of his kind of things, and I'm just reading through it and trying to, where is he going with this? And I've been listening to some of his lectures on YouTube. I'm trying to connect if I can get him on a show of Mind Trap, but it's so difficult. I can't find him on any social media site. It's like impossible to get hold of him. But yeah, it's really interesting. And he has this thing about, I'll tell you what I did find interesting, that he says that it's most likely that, this is his view. I'm not saying this is not my view, but this is in the book Moses and Akhenaten and in the other books. He argues that when Abraham went across with Sarai, Sarah, and by the way, according to the Bible as well, I think she was his half sister. So, but she was his wife. That said, I don't think in Islam it's mentioned, that part about the half sister, but the Bible mentions that. So when he goes to the land of the Pharaohs, he fears that they're going to, if they find out that's his wife, they're going to kill him and snatch her. But they wouldn't do that if the woman was your sister. So they do capture them, and Abraham says to her, say that you're my sister. So he says that, and Pharaoh says, in that case, I will marry her. And according to him and the biblical version, some readings of the Bible, that Pharaoh does marry her and she stays with him for a while. And then she leaves when Pharaoh realizes that actually Abraham lied and that was his wife. And from the gifts he gives her is the slave Hajar. That's which she then gives to Abraham, who is the mother of Ismail. Now, later on, the mother of Ismail. Now, when Sarah leaves Egypt with Abraham, she's pregnant. So he's arguing that Isaac is most likely the child of the Pharaoh and not the child of Abraham. And this is why that Pharaoh he's arguing is David. But it's really, and this is why, you see, I'll tell you something I didn't know, is that the Pharaohs are amongst the oldest civilizations to circumcise. So he says this is why then Abraham begins the circumcision. And he says because it was to Egyptianize that kind of thing and keep on this tradition. And he has this whole thing on this is why the Jewish people always put David up there, because he was the true kind of father of their lineage. But it's a strange read. It's a strange read. I'd love to be able to quiz him and ask him questions. But yeah, I'm sorry I got carried away with that. It's just so strange. Somebody said, yeah, that's true if it's normal to walk. What? Right, can you explain the incident? Somebody's asking again about Constantinople. You see, the Muslims always had their eyes on Byzantium. Yeah, not just the Muslims, the Arabs, the Middle East. The Byzantines were a huge empire, and they had become considerably weaker by that time. Even pre-Islam, the Arabs had been fighting them. The Ghassanids had been fighting them. The Sassanid, obviously the Persians were fighting them. But the point is that they were a huge dynasty. Everybody had their eyes on them. It wasn't something that why did all of a sudden the Umayyads have their eyes on Constantinople? They've always had it. It's been like the land of gold, paved with gold. They always thought, wow, Constantinople. So yeah, so this is why I feel maybe people remembered these hadith false memories. Somebody mentioned here didn't Tutankhamun marry his half sister. This actually reminds me, what's interesting is I was thinking about this. You see, in the Bible it mentions the daughter of Pharaoh finds Moses, but in the Quran it mentions his wife finds Moses. And why this discrepancy? And so I started looking into it, and you see there's two theories. One theory is that the Pharaoh that is when the Pharaoh in the infancy of Moses dies later on and is replaced by a second Pharaoh. So that first Pharaoh is like, let's say, according to some theory, Seti, the first, and the second one, when Moses has grown up, is Ramses the second, the great Ramses. So according to that theory, I was checking this up there. How does this work then? Why daughter and why wife? So the second pharaoh does actually marry the daughter of Seti, but it gets even more bizarre still. And three of his own wives, like he had, I think, 6 or 7 main wives, the Ramses, the great Ramses, if he is the pharaoh of Moses. 3 of his wives were his own daughters. So the pharaohs used to marry their own daughters and used to marry their own sisters, especially half sisters, but even full sisters. So it was quite common, incest was, only exclusively to the pharaohs. So the common public didn't do that. So that's strange. And I thought, wow, okay, that is very interesting, since the Quran mentions her as Imra'atu Fir'aun, that his wife, but the Bible mentions his daughter, yet they were the same person. I just thought that was, wow. I just came across that, and I was just researching and I was surprised. Okay, so, right, okay, people, avoid the debates within the groups, please, within the chat. Right, okay, please stop debating with people. If people are atheist, or if they're agnostic, or if they're Muslim, this is not, the chat rooms are not the place to be having, the chats here are not the place to be having debates. Okay, so, alright people, alright, so let's take a look. Guys, I want to mention, let's go to the Masala segment, shall we? Right, what is going on, people? What is going on? So I've got a little clip for us by the great, tusi great ho ji, tusi great ho, Naveed Ashrafi, Maulvi Naveed Ashrafi. Alright, so
when a mu'adhin is saying the adhan, now, according to the strict Sunni beliefs, and alhamdulillah, we all want to be pure Sunnis.
Strict Sunni beliefs.
A little wobbly here and there, we don't want to be like that. We want to be firm Sunnis.
This is about adhan.
They do not regard the adhan of the deviants as an adhan. We do not regard their jamaat, we do not consider their jamaat to be a jamaat. Okay? So, they an adhan. And I personally do not even respond to their adhan.
Personally, don't even respond.
Because they are misguided, we do not regard their. This is what our Salaf have told us, our pious predecessors, that their adhan is not an adhan, their jamaat is not a jamaat. Okay? So that you should just make you aware that yes,
Oh my God! Wow! Oh my God!
This is the same Naveed Ashrafi that I once replied to on Twitter with a tweet, as you can see there. This was years ago when his account got hacked, where he said, Mufti, oh Mufti, what part of Maliki fiqh teaches you that you are allowed to shave your beard and style it like Mufti Remington? And I said, the part you haven't studied yet. Right, so people, this is Maulvi Naveed Ashrafi Saab, and he seems so bitter about other sects. The wobblers. He's like, if they're wobblers, if they're wobbly, we don't want to be a bit wobbly. I don't even consider the adhan to be adhan. I don't even respond. You see, to me, it's all but. He seems so bitter. I could say the only other bitter person I've seen a bit like him is this mum. Let's check that again, people. Right, so let's see if I can bring that up again. No, it's not. Right, let me. That was a clip I found of a mother in some argument. Let me see if I can bring that up again. Who gets into some kind of an. Oh no, it's so. This is the kind of. This is what we're facing, people. This is what we're facing. That this kind of bitter sectarianism. That I don't even consider the adhan to be adhan. I don't even consider the salah or jama'ah to be jama'ah. I don't consider the. This is utter venom, pure venom being pushed, in the name of religion. And you can imagine how many people are watching that are probably taking guidance from this guy who's teaching them that this is how we treat it. This is how our aslaf. Who the hell are the aslaf, by the way? People from 80 years ago. The predecessors are people from 80 years. They're not like the Salaf, as in the companions of the Prophet. He's talking about our Aslaf, like from, let's say, from Brailwi Sharif or wherever. And I don't think all Brailwis, to be fair, would agree with him. So I don't think it's right to hold all of them to account. But this is nothing but spreading hate. Okay. And every group, you're right, somebody just mentioned, is in their own bubble. I totally agree with you. I 100% kind of second that. But this is just utter, one is, okay, that's very disappointing that people are in a bubble. But this is a new level of low. Like I don't consider their adhan an adhan. I don't consider their salah a salah. I don't consider their masjids. I don't consider their... what level of, how much are you trying to constrict this bubble? You Naveed Ashrafi Saab. Masala. You're spreading the poison, the venom. Wow. So this is something that we're really, we gotta... Somebody said, come on, you can't backbite on that man. It's okay. He'll probably consider me a wobbler. He'll probably say, look, he's just a wobbler. He's wobbling. I love you. I love you. That's got to be one of the most saddest terms ever, though. You gotta love that term. And that is such a diss, though. I love you. Damn, that's just lethal, man. That just hits. Oh. That, you'd rather be just sworn at than saying, like, vabro. And in the Mirpuri kind of community, they say it like vabro. Vabro. It's just like the acoustics are like so right, so yeah. Like to wobble, wobble. But then I do get the fact that some of the wobblers don't do themselves any favors. That is true as well, because they also preach a kind of level of hatred. But I just saw this and I thought, come on, you're taking the mick. Yeah. He's taking the mick. Cool, guys. I tell you what, if there's any quick rapid round, we'll do that, and let's wrap this up. It's gone way too late. It's gone way too late, people. I just saw that. I couldn't believe it. It's like, what the hell is that? There's these two ladies having some kind of an argument, and she just kicks the kid as well. that too, Bechara. She goes straight in the nuts. He's like, what the hell? Right, what's going down, people? I'll tell you what, some quick rapid round. Mufti, how many parathe for Sehri? I don't really have parathe for Sehri. I did actually have some for iftar, but Sehri don't really do parathe much. But yep, head wobble. What to do, huh? What to do? Yeah, fine. What's going on about paying zakat on shares? That's an interesting one. Paying zakat on shares. That's a tough one, really. You see, it would depend. I would say that what I would say is once you cash them out, in my opinion, once you cash them out, you would pay zakat on the cash received. I suppose that's an opinion. Another opinion is each year, whatever the asset value, you could be paying zakat on that. True, I suppose it's feeding the poor, so why not? It's, yeah, I suppose if it, I'm sure it does help the poor. But yeah, so I should be having on tomorrow night, by the way, when speaking of charities, the Wazio on Mindtrap, people. Those of you that know him, Wasim from Facebook is involved in all these humanitarian efforts. You're definitely going to catch him. We'll speak a lot about the kind of charity and stuff like that tomorrow night. All right. Mufti, do you know Hatim al-Hajj? Hatim al-Hajj. Right, I only recently saw something by Hatim al-Hajj. I don't know who he was. I had to kind of search the name and it came up. I think somebody to do with yaqeen. I think he's like if I recall correctly, is he a PhD kind of doctor that they've got or something? Mufti, what kind of tea are you drinking? Do you like masala chai or Kashmiri? I love Kashmiri chai. I do love regular desi chai. Even, your English breakfast, I like that as well. Rather. Rather, people, rather. Yep, somebody said Wasim Iqbal. Yep, Wazio is going to be on tomorrow night. Did Ibn Sina call wine as Nabith? No, Nabith already existed. So, oh right, I want to make a, do you have gas, Mufti? I think I do, I think I try to cut down on stuff, but, right, I want to make a correction, right, people. I saw somebody sharing a clip or something of me, so I thought, look, I watched it. The person was saying, oh, look, how can I get this? So in this clip, I've said, speaking about Ibrahim alayhi salam, and I'm answering a question, and I do answer it incorrectly, but it wasn't. People are going to say, yaar, notanki. See, I knew he was a fake Mufti. But I watched it back and I thought, no way, I wouldn't make a mistake like that. But I did it while speaking. Now, it was not, I've always known the answer. It's not that I've not. So some mistakes, I'm actually wrong. And I do admit to things like that. I say, oh, look, I've learnt about this. I used to think this, but now I think this. This was to do with the dream of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So I've been asked this on multiple occasions, that did Allah ask Ibrahim alayhi salam to slaughter his son, whether it was Ismail or Ishaq? Now, I've said on several occasions, because I've got this on other occasions as well, so you can watch it. I've answered it on several occasions, so it's not just on this. But I don't know which clip, where this particular clip was from, but it was me speaking, half drunk as always. So what I've said on most of these occasions is that, look, I don't believe that Allah told Ibrahim alayhi salam to sacrifice his son, but rather it was a dream that Ibrahim alayhi salam had, and his son tells him. So the Quran relays the story that he's telling his son, Inni ara fil manam, I see in a dream that I am sacrificing you. And his son says, If'al ma tu'mar, that do what you have been commanded to do. He says, Ya abati fa'al ma tu'mar, that, you'll find me from min as-sabirin, from the people of patience. Now, it is the son who is telling the father that, no, this is revelation. It must be a sign from God, just do it. But Allah never says in the Quran, we told Abraham to do it. Now, this is what I've said on several occasions. However, there was this one clip where I'm saying that, that it is a dream. I do say that part, but then I say, Ishaq, his son has this dream and he's telling him. That's obvious. Obviously, I do know that it's Ibrahim alayhi salam, because it is in the verse of the Quran itself. He says, Inni ara fil manami anni azbahuk, that I'm seeing in a dream that I am sacrificing you. That he says, Ya bunayya, that, oh son. So it's not like I didn't know it, but it was a slip. So I watched it. I was like, I was like, yeah, you need to be more sober when you're answering questions. So I do, I want that to be corrected. And there's no harm in, if you make a mistake, you make a mistake. But this was just, when I'm answering so many questions and I'm reading things and I've got things on my mind and I've got all kinds of things going on, sometimes you just mix stuff up. But don't worry, don't stress, don't stress. All right, so... Alright, so what is going on? We won't ban you, Macau. Okay. Alright, so any quick questions? What is going on? What is going on? They're saying vaccines are going to be mandatory for everyone. I read something today about them saying we're going to have health passports. God damn, that is so Orwellian. I mean, that is just pure... Like, if that's going to happen... We can say goodbye to our liberties, honestly. That is utterly unacceptable. To have a health passport. You're taking the mick. They think this is some kind of a police state. Right, so, people, let's wrap this up. Some people, quick question. Jews say Isaac was the one to be sacrificed versus Muslim. There's actually a good book by Qadi Abu Bakr ibn Arabi called... what's it called? Is it القول الصحيح في تعيين الذبيح or في تبيين الذبيح, something like this. But it's by Ibn Arabi. I have got it somewhere, and it's on who was the sacrificed son. Now, many of the ulama, many of the Salaf have disagreed. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu an used to believe it was Isaac, Ishaq. Sa'id ibn Musayyib, I believed it was Ishaq. Imam Malik believed it was Isaac and not Ismail. So many people did believe it was Isaac from the Muslims as well, but the majority believed it was Ismail. Cool, guys, let's wrap this up. Alright, looking fine. Shukran. Guys, as always, much love. I'm going to put up my other pages. If you haven't already liked, shared, then people, you're just being haters. Do like, do share, spread the love, people. Click the notification icon because I'm releasing videos on a daily basis. I'm trying to get them out there so you get notified whenever something's happening. You're kept in the loop, people, because my timings ain't gonna ever work. That would never happen. If I started doing things on time, just consider that to be from the signs of the hour, that it's all gonna end anyway. Guys, as always, much love. Take very good care of yourselves. Have a great day wherever you are. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.